Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, with a lovely bit of, technical difficulty. We're here live, ready to bring you some joyous news on a Monday late afternoon, and I'm joined by my brilliant colleague here, Jonathan Vesio. How are you this evening,
mate?
Good,
thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Oh, goodness me. It's funny actually say technical difficulty. And I'm looking at Billy over there who was trying to help us out behind the scenes with a green screen that's a bit faulty this evening, but that's okay. We're going to push on 5 minutes behind schedule. Now, tonight's topic, Jonathan, what we discussed briefly earlier, the worst thing to say on your rental application. And then, look, I mean, this topic more so to you being that you're on the residential side of things. Yeah. Let's dive deep into it. Let's see what it's all about. Go for it, mate.
Let's do it. All right. So the worst thing to put in your application. There's quite a few that are kind of go unspoken. We don't really speak much about.
Here we go. He's walking out the door.
So number one, I would say would be pets. Pets is always just something that landlords just never agree on.
What do you think that is, though? What?
So I don't know. I don't really know what it is. I believe it's more to the fact when I speak to landlords and try and say that an applicant has a pet, they end up going off the fact of, it's going to damage our floors, damage our carpets, and just pretty much damage the whole property. And it's just the fact of that they don't want to pay for the.
So it's automatic thought to the worst.
Exactly.
Basically.
So you can't really even sell a landlord a pet. It's pretty much impossible. They have the worst thought on the pet. You can't really do anything about it, which kind of makes it a little bit harder to get anybody in a property when they have a pet.
Okay. So that's the pet side of things. What else do you think is the worst thing? Like what? Let's really dig deep. What's kind of like something? What's something that you've seen that you can draw on from example, really?
Well, there's a couple. It comes with people not really reading the ad.
Yeah,
it happens a lot where people don't read the ad and then they'll go and put like back to the pet situation, back to a pet on the application.
Yeah.
So the worst one I've seen probably would be the ad actually said no pets, and this lady decided that she wanted to advertise on her application that she had 5 cats.
Yeah.
And I said, it says no pets on the application.
Yeah.
She said, I didn't read it. And we were like, well, it says no pets. She's like, can't you just put it forward to the landlord? We're like, it says no pets for a reason. Yep. Let alone 5 cats, and I think that's really something.
So you almost start off on that little bit of a rough patch there,
exactly.
and it kind of goes a little bit curly from there. I mean, like we said, you work residential leasing. I work commercial leasing and sales, and from a leasing capacity in commercial, and this is where I'm going to throw my 2 cents in. I think one of the worst things that someone can put forward in an offer, because we don't really run off an application process like residential do. It's more or less an offer that we're proposing to the landlord or the owner of the property, and it's when someone single-handedly puts down that they'd like to sleep at the property. And it's an interesting one because, I mean, look, there are office spaces out there that people like to utilize that, for personal or business use. Some of them can be quite cozy. Some of them can be quite tucked away and, pretty self-sustainable. So, there goes the gong. There goes the gong. You know what's going on up there? Deals potentially be made. But in saying all that, it's one of those things where people are a little bit too far-fetched, a little bit too honest, and put forward the notion of wanting to reside at the property. I mean, especially when they're looking at the fact that the rents could be quite cheap, quite low. Hello, Mr. Novak. It's almost like they're trying to get a win-win from the situation, but it's a bit of a tough one. It's especially when it falls a lot around, the zoning of the property, what the property's purpose is there for, what it's gone through in as far as a DA goes, for instance. If it was a barbershop, for instance, you can't bloody go sleeping in a barbershop. Like, that's a very big and broad example. But that's one piece that I can add to this really interesting topic we've got tonight. What else do you think? And look, I mean, we don't have to go really too dark into it, but what else do you think as far as rental application goes?
Yeah, so with the rental application, it comes with providing some documents so that we can kind of find out a little bit more about your most of the time it's financial situation to make sure you can support yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We do get a lot of the time people giving us their spending accounts and it has something like $1 in there, and we go, well, how are you going to pay for anything. How are you going to pay the rent? And so we end up not going through with the application because there's 70 cents in their bank account, which would make sense. And then they call us going, why didn't we get approved? And we go, well, you only had this much in your bank account. And they say, oh, well, we have a savings account. We're like, well, why didn't you send in your savings account? Because we're looking for your financial status, not just to look at your bank statement. Like, it's not what it's about. So there's just like minor details, that little things that just throw it off completely.
That's it. That's that particular one. It's the minor details that don't really get looked over quite carefully, which can almost make just the initial process into the property just quite a bit of a difficult experience for you that you've got to run through. It's quite interesting. I think then I'm thinking exploring the whole commercial side of things, people putting forward a proposal for a property. There was obviously one where I mentioned there, people in terms of a living situation. Look, as far as being honest goes, it's extremely crucial about being honest of what the intentions are for the space. I feel like when there's not enough honesty behind the proposal, for instance, and we're flawed between different variables not making really much sense, it can really put a sour taste in just those forefront steps, getting into the property. But look, as far as the worst thing I think that someone can put, or one of the other worst things that someone can put, I think it's about being really dishonest with your assets and your liabilities. Like in terms of applications for residential, it's looking at financials. It's completely similar with commercial. We just look at it on a bigger scale, especially if it's a business. And I think about not being really honest about where the business stands. It can be one of the most detrimental things when it comes actually moving forward with the property. So that's another thing from a commercial aspect. Let's bounce back to Resi. What else do you see?
I got one more good one. It's putting down so when we call for references, put down the wrong number.
There we go.
It is the most annoying thing when you call. So the other day it actually happened to me for the first time. I called someone's boss, so I thought, just to do a quick check up on the work reference, and the dad answered. So the dad didn't actually get told that he was put down for the reference. So the dad answered, he said, hello, this is Dylan speaking. And I said, I'm just doing a reference check. And then he goes, oh, that's my son. And I said, I don't think you were supposed to say that. But anyways, do you by any chance have the number? And he goes, sorry, I don't have the number. So I called back the guy saying, sorry, you've just given the wrong number for the reference check. So he gives me another number. And then he gives me the wrong number again. He gives me his own number. So it's just like putting down the right number so we can actually do the checks properly, because it becomes more of like a fluff around for us, and then it just makes it look worse on your behalf when we're trying to like chase up things more.
Absolutely. So we've explored basically, the whole notion around pets. We've explored the notion around your income, basically, where you stand in that realm. Your references, and this falls with commercial as well, your trade references. It's about being crucially honest with those, not kind of blanketing them by putting the wrong person or someone that you know is going to back you up if need be. It's really good to get people out there that'll vouch for you without really having to press that matter. I was just actually thinking of a really interesting one just then, in terms of commercial. Like I've got a million and one things running through my mind today, and it's just one of those like Monday evening emotions. Commercial wise, I think one of the next really interesting thing. Actually, no. I was actually going to bounce a thought back to you. Residential. Do you think? It's one of the worst things you could do is put down that, like, all right, let's say you've put yourself down, for instance, and you put 6 other people. To potentially live with you. Is that another thing that's like just kind of like a no-go zone?
Yeah, it's just like random. Like we get some people going for like a 2-bedroom unit with 4 or 5 people, and we're just like, that's not going to work. Like we feel bad because we want to get them in, but it's like you're going to be living on top of each other. Like it's just stuff like that.
And for instance, there's not normally a maximum amount of people for a property, for instance, that an owner or landlord's looking for. And then each person normally has to apply separately. Is that how it works?
So separate applications per person. So if you're over 18, you're on the lease pretty much all of the time. So you have to have an application for each person over 18.
Interesting. Okay. So there are a couple of of the worst things you can, not necessarily the worst, but things to look out for, I think, that we've explored a little bit tonight. With commercial, it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more foolproof in that realm. You can't really cut too many corners. when we're dealing with such an asset. With residential, I feel that other people get a little bit cheeky or a little bit oblivious to some of the things that are requested or some of the things that are asked for. But look, it's definitely something. It's definitely something to look out for. I mean, it's never a bad thing when people ask these questions. And some people don't normally go through leasing out a property on a constant basis to know the processes or know the steps. So that's why these things can come across a little bit shocking.
Exactly.
But overall, there's nothing, the worst thing that could be done.
It's hard to top it. Like, you can't really be the worst. There's little things that you can do that, like, obviously we don't look for, or some are not like looking into, sort of thing. But it's very hard to do something extremely bad on an application.
Fair enough. Well, Jonathan, look, it was a brief, but I hope informative Novak news tonight.
Very informative.
We had a little bit of a technical hiccup there.
Yeah, a little bit.
But look, I think before we wrap it up, how long now have you been working in residential leasing?
About 4.5 months now, so not too long. Just starting to learn the ropes. Really, there's a lot to learn.
Yeah,
there's lots to
take in. And you're pretty switched on when it comes to your day to day. You're on the computer, you're answering your calls.
Yeah, it gets pretty.
And Wednesdays and Saturdays get pretty exciting.
Yeah, get pretty busy. Yeah. Very, very busy. Doing. Now it's starting to come into the beginning of February. It's tending to get really, really busy.
Did you feel it too? Did you feel that
Crazy.
February was just
insane?
Yeah, February opened up to a different world altogether in the real estate market. And look, being for one in the commercial market, it is absolutely incredible. And Mark and I have dabbled in this before. Investors galore. A lot of people looking to buy. A lot of people looking to spend. Unused equity I've generated over the past 2 years. 2020 and 2021 definitely, opened up a different avenue for people to now explore, and more so in the realm of commercial, but definitely not stopping the residential market. Jonathan, pleasure. Thank you so much.
Always.
Alrighty. Don't work too hard the rest of the week. Bloody hell, it's only Monday, but let's see what the rest of the week has in store. Thanks so much for joining, everybody.
Guys.
Have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.